I've known you for a couple of months now.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is that you, like myself, are very, very self-critical.
Extremely so, yeah.
Yeah. Why? And first of all, like, how does it feel like to criticize yourself on a day-to-day basis?
I think, okay, well, like everything, if you look at it objectively, there are there are there are good and bad sides to self-criticism. I think um, I think fundamentally it comes from the correct intention of wanting things to be right. So you want yourself to be right and to do things correctly, and you hold yourself to high standards as a consequence. But I think it also then kind of spreads to your view of the world, and so you hold other people as well to high standards because you think, well, if I do something well, I expect other people to do as well because I'm not going to tolerate people slacking off when I'm doing an extra effort, you know. So I think the basic, the fundamental thinking is self-betterment, self-development, growing, reaching for the ideal, um, reaching for who you want to be, always striving towards in that direction. And obviously, it comes with some major drawbacks, which are that an ideal is called an ideal for a reason, and it's that it's an ideal. It's imaginary. You won't get that. Like, it's a dream, you know, because you're always pushing it even further. Otherwise, there's no challenge. So, you know, you're kind of reaching for something that's not there, so you're constantly disappointed in yourself, and that's why like you keep cutting yourself down. So that's the major drawback is that you're constantly like unsatisfied with yourself.
And hurting yourself.
Yeah, of course.
No.
In excessive amounts, it's very unhealthy.
There are few dictators in history that I'm a fan of.
Okay.
And I remember I used to go to therapy, especially during quarantine, so online. And I remember, I still do sometimes in my mind, call this self-critical part the dictator in my head.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
And dictators are, quite often very wrong. So when you manage to quieten down this dictator, then you start realizing, oh my God, I'm such a dick to the rest of the world as well, just because I'm such a dick to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you're a dick to yourself, it hurts a lot, but you're only getting hurt yourself. That's what you think, but no, you're hurting everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you
That's true.
manage it?
Mm, I think so. I think there's also the idea of dictatorship. It has there's a good element to the metaphor, but there's also you're kind of bringing the bad connotation of dictatorship with it,
Mm-hmm.
which is obviously everything that people associate with dictatorships. But if a dictatorship comes with good intention, it's not necessarily a bad thing because it's the same person who stayed a long time and can actually stay long enough to make change. So a dictatorship isn't all bad. So you have to also nuance the notion of dictatorship and self-criticism. See what I mean?
Yes.
Um, and so that's my first point. And my second point is uh, how okay. So how do I manage um, how do I manage and kind of stifle the self-criticism towards myself and others, and keep it like socially acceptable? If I guess that was your question. Um,
Well, socially acceptable, not necessarily in terms of just for the sake of being socially acceptable, but in the sake of having a society that is functional. Let's say that is not a bunch of dicks being dicks to each other. That's kind of.
um, I I think I think if you're so a quite well-known saying is like if you're aware of something, then that's already half of the problem solved. Have you ever heard of this kind of thinking? It's like,
Well, just showing up is half the battle. That's the closest thing I've heard. But
yeah.
yeah, it totally makes sense to me.
In French, we say a man who's aware is worth two.
Hmm.
So the basic idea is if you're aware of your own weaknesses, then like you've already made a big jump. So if you're aware that you're self-critical and you're aware that you keep cutting yourself down and that spreads to other people and you cut other people down in your head as well, and you hold them up to high standards and they can feel that pressure, and you know that you have an impact, and you know that you're not like some invisible, transparent person, like you're part of a society and you have an impact on people. If you're aware of that, then you can like that's when you can start to take action to kind of nuance it and make it a bit more like make it softer on people, like, you know, don't be as harsh on people, and also don't be as harsh on yourself. But that's something that takes a lot of time. I think you develop these kinds of habits quite early on in childhood, probably, as most psychological things, I guess. And it takes many years into young adulthood to fix these kinds of habits, I think.
Well, I guess
That's
right
why
now.
you grow. Yeah, that's why we grow so much at our ages, is because you keep you. That's when you realize that all those habits that you developed as a child and as a teenager, they don't hold in the real world. Like you can't be like that. You know, it's not sustainable.
Well, what I've been told by basically by others your age
Mm.
is that the period we have between me being 19 and you being 24 is the period while this happens. No?
It's not
So
enough.
still time left.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I think even older people will argue that at their age it's still not finished. Like some people will argue that you're never done.
Yeah, this podcast is called Unfinished Business for that
Exactly.
very reason.
Like yeah,
Yeah.
it's exactly that. Yeah. Like I think Hannes said that in one of his
Mhm.
episodes. We're constantly unfinished business. Like you
Yeah, that's
never
the
get
exact
there.
phrase where the sentence, the name of the podcast came from as well. Yeah, I love that
We-
so much.
We're never done. We never get there, and this can be kind of discouraging, but I mean that's the way it is. I guess there's no reason to be discouraged about it. It's just how it is. You just keep growing. There's also, you can see it in this positive way. You can shine this positive life on it, that you know, you're constantly evolving, and there's a beautiful side to that. But it's I think what varies is the speed at which you progress through life, and that speed I think is much greater at our age than when you're 40, for example, or 45.
You know this awareness that you mentioned.
Mm.
Sometimes, you know, of course, I'm very self-aware about being self-critical. This is something that I've mostly worked on over the past. I don't even want to say a year, less than a year, but I've managed to become quite aware of, like, understand when I'm being self-critical and sort of stop the pain. But sometimes the self-criticism actually stems from the awareness. Because I've also become a lot more aware of the other aspects of my life, every action I take.
Yeah, and the fact that you started being aware, it made you more like sensitive to all the other stuff that
Exactly.
might go wrong. Yeah,
Exactly.
makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, my self-criticism applies to every single thing I do. So I don't think there are many areas I could recite right now in my life where I'm, you know, quite lenient and tolerant on myself, at least. Like I think the most, for me personally, the most the aspect in which I'm the least tolerant is socially. So I'm very, very aware of how I behave towards other people, and to me that counts. Like, it's very important. And so as soon as I'm very slightly off of like this idea that I have in my head of how I want to behave and the person I want to be towards other people. As soon as I'm very slightly off, I just kick myself in the shins, you know. And it's not a very healthy habit at all.
I mean,
But
not
at
only
least
does it,
like I grow from it, I guess. You know.
but that growth thing, I don't know. I mean, it definitely hurts a lot. It
Oh, yeah.
makes social events very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, this is my main struggle with any social event.
But the thing is, like, when you succeed, when you're happy, you're proud of how you behaved, and you're like, I actually did fine. Like, that's within my zone of tolerance. Like, I tolerate how I behaved. You're like, that's good. I know where I'm going now. Like, I have an even better idea. Like, my goal is even clearer. This is the direction I'm going in. I'm happy with this way of behaving at this time of my life. See what I mean? It defines things. It makes them clearer. Because it's one thing to behave in a way that you don't like and say, "Ah, I don't like this." But it's like, well, how should you behave? Because it's
Exactly.
like, it's way harder to work through things by eliminating them than by actually finding what you do like. See what I mean?
But it's really, really hard to find what you like.
Yeah, of
That's
course.
the main struggle. It's really, really difficult. I mean, I still struggle with it. Honestly, it takes me on the order of 2 months to actually regularly talking to a person to actually even be comfortable enough to remove that extreme self-criticism when I'm interacting with that person.
Yeah, yeah. That seems like a very reasonable time frame for me.
Okay. So in
It's
terms of self-criticism, we're very, very similar.
Yes,
Looks like.
yes.
I wonder how other people. I should ask more people about this
Mhm.
because most people don't seem like they're very self-critical from the
I
outside.
don't think it's something that shows that much. I think, like, people have to be particularly self-critical for it to be blatantly obvious. I mean, you picked up on it for me, but I think I also mentioned it before. You must have said something like that about yourself, and I
No, I think
shared.
you started
I
that
don't remember.
conversation actually.
Oh, I did.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, there you
A
go.
while ago. Yeah.
But I think someone you don't talk to that much, like it's not something that you can just see.
Mhm.